framed in terms of it's all just about hatred and partisanship. I think it's actually, there's a lot of it that's not about that. A lot of the story here is that there really are new readers, new audiences.
We have to care about what the Trump side thinks about things.
And also, some of my favorites are people who've read the Odyssey or the Iliad years ago or been forced through it in school and then come back to it and realize there is so much more in this poem than I realized when I read it when I was 16.
On your website, there's a place to send emails if you want to book an interview or a speaking engagement, another one if you want to offer praise, and then one is titled simply Misogynistic Trolls. And there's a notice there that says, please know that I reserve the right to share your message in presentations and on platforms such as Blue Sky, Substack, and in articles I write. If I use your work, I will be sure to credit you for your remarks with your full name and contact email. All threatening messages are reported to the appropriate law enforcement agencies. What's been the impact on your life?
I mean, I took my contact details down from my website. I've made myself a little harder to find. So I don't want to be invisible. My name is not No Man. I want to actually be able to be out in the world and speak about things I care about with people who are engaged and want to talk to me. I mean, I mostly just remind myself that this is a tiny pocket of the world. Most people are decent and well-intentioned. And I also, when I was a child, I learned by heart Kipling's poem, If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. I can do the whole thing, but I'm not going to waste your time with the whole thing. But it ends up with the idea that if you can do all of that, if you can put things in perspective, you'll be a man, my son. And so I just think I'm the bigger man here.
Okay. We need to take another break.
We certainly are. The manosphere doesn't even amount to...
professor of classical studies at the University of Pennsylvania, who has translated the Iliad and the Odyssey.
It doesn't have nothing to do with manhood or being a man. All of them put together does not equal a man. Look at Andrew Tate, their leader.
The International Criminal Court is dealing with multiple scandals. A disgraced chief prosecutor accused of sexual assault, an American Secretary of State calling for the court's dismantling, and a mess in New York City over a warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu's arrest. Next time on Today Explained.
Why is that a mess?
On CPR News.
Like, just arrest him for war crimes. ICC. Choke on it.
Hi, I'm Aaron Stanfill, chair of the music committee for Friends of Chamber Music, and we sponsor CPR. A CPR sponsorship provides an exceptional a meaningful way to connect with an audience that values integrity, quality, and community impact. The reach and audience alignment are hard to match with traditional media. And we often hear from concert goers that they first discovered us through CPR, and our ticket sales go up significantly when our spots are running. Learn more about sponsoring at cpr.org.
This is Fresh Air. We're speaking with Emily Wilson, a professor of classical studies at the University of Pennsylvania.
He really tried to get her to weigh in on the manosphere's complaints,
which have gotten more attention lately with the release of Christopher Nolan's new film. Wilson has a new collection of essays titled...
If he asks her about it again, I'm shutting it off immediately.
You know, when people describe you, often the first thing they mention is that you're the first woman to have translated the Odyssey into English. It was one of the first things I mentioned, but I think I read that when you got the publishing contract to do this translation, you didn't even know that you would have been the first woman to translate it into English.
Hello.
Was that news?
Yes, that was news to me. I mean, I hadn't even thought about the fact that all of the translations I'd used in the classroom before were by men. I mean, that wasn't actually part of my motivation at all. I mean, I'd already talked about my motivation in terms of poetics and in terms of pacing, in terms of the proto-dramatic vividness of the poem. It wasn't that I wanted to. I thought, you know, Homer hasn't got enough gold cooties on it. Let me get, which I think is sometimes the online discourse seems to be some version of that, or some version also of. I mean, it can be, let's celebrate her for being a girl, which I think either one of those is actually a little bit misleading about my actual work.
Right. I think having listened to it, I get that. How do you react when people call it a feminist translation of the Odyssey?
What's wrong
with that? I think it's very limiting in terms of women's work and also in terms of feminism. If you think anything a woman does is inherently feminist. I also think it's misleading about the fact that, of course, there are many, many female classicists, many female Homerists. There were also many female translators of Homer into other languages. There was one by a French woman called Anne Dacier from centuries ago into French prose. So I think it's this blinkered idea both about gender and about the idea that the English-speaking world is the only thing that exists.
But are you using the blinkered idea that feminism is a criticism?
With the assumption that all female characters will be presented as ridiculous. But I don't think that's actually feminism. I think feminism actually needs to be a bit more than that if there's going to be a feminist intervention. I do approach the task of translating Homer with the idea that these poems are really good, and they're really good at characterizing all of the characters, including female characters, including enslaved characters, but we really do get these richly realized, distinct points of view. But again, that's not actually about feminism.
How is that not about feminism?
When I started preparing for this interview, I read a lot about you. I read things you'd written. I listened to podcasts and interviews of yours, and then I decided, wait a minute.
Thank you.
There's an audiobook of this translation. And so I started listening at the very beginning. I listened to almost all of it and really enjoyed it. How would you recommend people who want to engage with your work? Read it? Listen to the audiobook? Both?
I love that you listen to the audiobook. So the audiobook of my Odyssey is done by Claire Danes, and the audiobook of my Iliad is done by Audra McDonald. I think they both did amazing jobs. Homer, as we've said already, was usually experienced in antiquity in oral performance. So there's something very authentic about listening to an audiobook of Homer. But also I think it's fine to read it however you prefer. Read it on your phone, on your Kindle if you want to, or get the paperback and then you could underline things if there are passages that you like or don't like. I also love that I very often hear from people who are forming little book clubs and reading it out loud with their friends or with their partners, or reading it out loud to their children. I think it's really fun to for readers to also be actively engaged with these poems, and readers can do what I always love doing whenever I get to read a little bit, of put on funny voices. And I think people should both read it in whatever form works for you and have fun with it.
You spent 6 years translating the Odyssey, similar time translating the Iliad, and now you want to do it again?
Yes, I'm addicted, yes.
Why? I mean, were there things that you felt you got wrong or you needed to enhance, or I don't know?
So, I mean, as we said a few minutes ago, I was very keen to try to replicate something like the experience of the rapidity of Homeric poetry in both my Odyssey and Iliad translation. So with my 2017 Odyssey translation, I confined myself to the same number of lines as the original, which I liked in terms of how it conveys the speed of the original poem. But I also was constantly feeling if I just had one or two more syllables, I could do more with that phrase or that word. With the Iliad translation, I gave up on the line-for-line constraint, so I use a few more lines than the original has, and I felt it worked better. I felt it enabled me to use more polysyllabic words than I could with the original Odyssey translation. I was always forced to, whenever possible, use a monosyllable, because otherwise the line count won't work out, especially because I was using...
It's remarkable that you could pull that off to me.
I mean, it was a fun challenge. I mean, it was not just the fun of engaging with Homer all the time, every day, but also that fun language challenge.
Way to live for 6 years.
Translation is fascinating in itself because it's this constant puzzle about how can you do the impossible with two languages. So with my new translation of the Odyssey, I'm redoing the whole thing to match the approach of my Iliad. I'm prioritizing many of the same things as I do in my existing Odyssey translation: metricality, multivocality, the directness, the emotional impact, all of that. But I also am using more lines, therefore longer words sometimes. And that also means that I can do more with the repetitions of the original. And I'm also going to have much, much longer endnotes.
You having fun with it?
I'm having so much fun, yes. I'm over halfway through and I never want it to end.
Emily Wilson, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you so much.
Emily Wilson is a professor of classical studies at the University of Pennsylvania, who's translated the Iliad and the Odyssey. Her new collection of essays is titled Crossing the Wine Dark Sea. On tomorrow's show, we speak with Emmy Award-winning actor Jon Bernthal. He often plays intense, violent, damaged characters like Mikey from The Bear and Shane from The Walking Dead.
Never seen him.
Talking about himself and his characters, Bernthal says it's easy for someone who's scared to turn into someone who's really scary. He currently stars in The Odyssey and the new Spider-Man film, A Brand New Day. I hope you can join us.